Okay, 3 minutes, okay, very quick. The underlying idea is to radically transform market's fundamental ontology and the context in which market operates. More specifically, the market players should not be selfish individuals blindly chasing for private interests. Rather, these market players should be various communities, enterprises, trade unions, banks, investment institutions, etc. These communities manage and use, but not own their working conditions, which they acquire from the social pool of capital through capital markets. Internally, these communities are organized as the Republican Association of Free Producers, conceived by Marx in his critique of Gotha program. That is, these Republican associations as market players are organized in democratic ways for decision-making on economic issues. Most importantly among them are the income level of capital owners and managers, hiring and firing, distribution of accumulation and consumption. And the political issues, most important among them, is the power distribution within the community. Externally, in addition to market relations with other market players, they are subject to democratically organized socialist government's regulation at the relevant levels, also guided by socialist values and norms. These Marxian associations, new kind of market players, have provided the only institutional setting in which moral incentives can flourish and dominate human psyche and behavior, which Che Guevara took as the decisive factor for socialism. Without these institutional settings, Guevara's moral idealism would be groundless. In order to avoid the communitarian trap of exclusiveness and distinguish itself from the anarchic syndicalism, in this model, all newcomers getting into an association through labor market should automatically enjoy a full membership of the association and the related inalienable membership rights. With the changed players and the changed institutional context, the logic of the socialist market will be radically different from the logic of the capitalist market. While competition and incentives remain to be the core of the market for effective information processing that is necessary for efficiency, the motivation and goals are no longer focused on exclusive, infinite accumulation of capital through chasing profit, but rather on reciprocity and communal, regional, national, balanced economic development for meeting human needs. Thus, the result of market activity would not be polarization, class division, and exclusion, but rather inclusion, trust, personal empowerment in free choice and in decision-making. With these foundational, okay, I think I still have 2 minutes, okay. With these foundational changes, the labor market will no longer be the mechanism through which workers are exploited, but rather a mechanism through which workers' freedom is realized. Workers entering an enterprise will enjoy full membership rights equal to all other members, not as employees. Those fired and leave the enterprise will have basic income to rely on and will have the right to receive self-chosen training for re-entering a preferable enterprise. These opportunities, this retraining opportunity should be offered by regional or national government, funded by regional or national pool of social capital. Similarly, the capital markets and financial markets will no longer be places for speculation leading to volatility, but rather for effective use of capital in various forms of property rights of working conditions through value discovery, which is a great help in structural adjustment and various innovations, and thus facilitates the change of government's function from administrative planning to regulations. A conclusion can be reached that is that markets are not only compatible with socialism, but rather in terms of their subjects understood as communities in which workers and all other members enjoy equal status and rights, stipulated and protected by a socialist constitution. And in terms of the commons, understood as socially usable resources, assets, knowledge, and activities, realized through capital and financial markets, markets provided only desirable and feasible economic form in realizing socialist principles, no alienation and efficiency. For all this to be possible, however, workers' socialist political will and political power are decisive. Their inalienable Republican rights within association and without, regionally and nationally, have to be clearly stipulated in Constitution and protected by legal institutions. Also to be clearly stipulated in Constitution and protected by legal institutions is the equal and universal access by all associated citizens to capital, information, and service, which is crucial for the capital market to become a mechanism of creating the socialist commons. They are decisive also because the coordination and the regulation of markets have to be guided by the socialist political will and carried out by the socialist political power structures. Then the crucial question is, how could such a socialist political will and such a socialist political power structure emerge from today's capitalist environment? But this practical and strategic issue is beyond the scope of this talk and remains to be properly addressed in other occasions. Thank you very much.
So we, can you hear me? We overshot on time by a few minutes, but what we could do is, the note I got said that we should try and curtail the question entirely, but if there are questions, I can quickly, we can collect one round and maybe have a shortened question and answer session so that we don't eat into the next session, and some of the question answers can go into the tea break. So we'll start with you at the back. Could I just see the hands so that I know once and for all? There's 1, 2, you, right? Okay, so these are the 3 we'll take, and then we will give over to the next session. Please.
Yeah, I think you can argue for market socialism, but I don't think you can. You can argue market socialism in the name of Karl Marx. You interpreted the Marxian view of socialism as a market socialism, quoting Marx texts like Gotha program. And according to your interpretation of Marx Gotha program, this early phase of communism is market socialism. But if we read the text carefully, it is very obvious that Marx already assumed that the market and value and wage labor and state all abolished in the first early stage of communism. So I don't think so. Although, but you even argues that it's early phase of communism, not just market, but it's the labor market exists. So, and I don't think, and I think Marx himself already criticized radically the sort of it's the idea of market socialism, even in early days. I think it's very consistently Marx himself criticized the idea of socialism. For example, Marx criticized Proudhon. Proudhon's theory is nothing else than the theory of market socialism. So I think, yeah, that is my point.
Something when Marx himself wrote against socialism.
Oh.
Yeah. You take all questions together?
Let me respond to this first. And this question, of course, the issue I address is very controversial. But if we really take Marx's spirit in his critique of Kurt's program. The spirit is that in the socialist stage of the communism,